We ended last week with something of a mashup of a brew in Brew York's Strawberry Cream Tea IPA. And following on from that unusual mix, we have something of another, as we welcome to the channel Hong Kong's Gwei-lo. Founded back in 2014, and just like the streets of their hometown, their beers are bright, exciting, and very, very inviting. They like it light, bright, but bursting with quality. Whether you're at a Hong Kong street market or one of our very own beautiful beer gardens, they hope we enjoy drinking it just as much as they've enjoyed making it. Now, you can call me somewhat snobbish, but I do try and stay clear of reviewing supermarket brews. Sorry, but as I had their sherbet sour a couple of months back and was pretty damn impressed with it, I'm fairly confident I'm on to a winner here. Or at the very least, a rather enjoyable one. As we spread ourselves a little peanut butter and raspberry jam pale ale, weighing in at a floaty 4.9% and hopped with the Mosaic. Brewed with both peanuts and raspberry puree, this aims to be a classic pale ale with a desserty twist. And with the addition of wheat and oats to that grain bill, we can hope for a creamy smoothiness to boot. So, from one Gwei-lo to another, let's get pouring. Oh my god, that does smell beautiful. Loads of sweet berries at the fore. That raspberry really does pack a punch, and real creamy too. It's like a petit filou. And there are some real sweet cereal notes down in there too. Very, very sweet, like one of those cereal bars you get on the go. And there are some real nutty notes to it also. So it kicks off with a bright, slightly sharp raspberry before fading into a creamy middle. And it must be said, it is pretty nutty in that middle too. So it is carrying those promised flavours really quite well. And that nuttiness, it does carry down into the tail, where it fades out with a malty bitterness, leaving a wheaty, almost breakfast cereal-esque tinge in the mouth, and something of a grassy, almost piney bitterness along with it. Now, if there is one tiny criticism to be made, it could be in that body. It did have quite a lively level of carbonation to it to begin with, but it would have been nice if that body retained some of that thickness and that creaminess. But on the flip side, that does make it quite light, quite refreshing, and very easy drinking, which I guess was the point all along, especially as it weighs in under that magic 5%. Now, I did make mention to Brew York in that intro, and it seems the connection continues with the beer. As again, I've just spotted on the can that little Brew York sign. I really do need to inspect these cans a little better before I get stuck in. So I guess I can now say from one weird experimental Brew York brew to another. Now it must be said, some of those sweeter notes are starting to lose their way a little. There is still a little lick of that raspberry right up top, but it has now become much nuttier, much wheatier, and much more malt driven in those middles and into that finish. It's starting to give me the feel of a beer that should be a lot darker than that. That said, it is still very much on the sweet side, but that sweetness is now coming from those creamy notes instead of the fruity ones. And as a result, we are starting to lose a little bit of that uplifting, refreshing vibe it had to begin with. So maybe upping that grain bill and giving the brew a bit of a thickness in body wouldn't have been such a bad idea after all. And now we're down into the final third. It has to be said, those aromas are to die for. Sweet raspberries, smooth creaminess, a little nutty tickle, and a touch of the breakfast cereals. It was almost taking me back to my youth. Overly sugary, now probably banned breakfast cereals, tub after tub of sweet petit feu yogurts, and a whole heap of Nutella on toast. All that good stuff. And that's probably the diabetes talking. And boy, is it all that when you dunk in. But if you're expecting this brew to be all sweetness and light, well, you better be prepared for a little switch up as it starts to develop a real malty, nutty backbone the further you dive in. And it goes from being a fresh, uplifting, light pale ale to something you might expect to find down the cask side of the bar. So the question of that light body does rear its ugly head again, as although that lightness is a real blessing to begin with, once those sweeter notes fade, it does start to feel a little watery and just a little thin. I think it's safe to say this is a beer of two halves. And I'm not entirely sure fans of one side will really enjoy the other.